Hold up, I ain't trying to stump, man, but the Yeezys jumped over the jump, man. I be in and out of arenas like I'm Scottie Pippen. Left my elbow in the pot, a la Vince Carter.
Bitch, you wasn't with me shooting in the gym?
James Harden with the range on me, nigga, way back.
Coach, they won't knock me off my pivot, forget it.
Been flowing stupid since Vince Carter was on some through the legs arm and a hoop shit.
And you can live through anything if Magic made it.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know, now you do.
Yes, sir. We are back. Round of applause for yourselves. This is your guy, Marcellus Ease, and we got some good stuff on the docket for today. The NBA Player podcast space is getting quite interesting because that same competitive fire is spilling over into the media space, and current day Orlando Magic KCP brings up a great question on Donovan Mitchell's reliability as a superstar. Ever since he shook things up in Utah in his rookie year, things really haven't been on the up and up. And we'll also get into volume 3 of my uncomfortable conversation segment, in which Shaq finally stands up and goes 10 toes down, letting it be known that the Lakers three-peat with him and Kobe was really his. So we'll do a deeper dive of why Shaq has some of these sentiments, and a lot of it has to do with the way Kobe forced him out. Speaking on another dynamic that has been forced on players, we'll touch base with CJ McCollum, Georgie Yang, Duncan Robinson, as well as Cam Johnson, as they slowly begin to admit some of the flaws with the new CBA. A lot of the current day superstars in the past couple seasons have re-signed with their teams instead of hitting for free agency, and the NBA owners very systematically have crafted out player movement. Last but not least, we'll hear from former NBA player Jim Jackson as he sat down with Paul George, and he forced him to admit on his platform some of the sentiments around NBA circles in regards to how Giannis gave Damian Lillard the boot. Ironically for Podcast P, the same situation could play out in Philly if things continue to go left. Now, KCP during a sit-down was asked about the star power of Tyrese Halliburton, and with him giving his answer to this question, a real truth began to reveal itself as he discussed Donovan Mitchell's star power. And I've always alluded that Spida for a long time now has been living off the reputation he had in his rookie year, eliminating Russell Westbrook, Carmelo Anthony, and Paul George in the playoffs. Ever since then, it's been a bunch of heartbreaking first-round exits. During the 2018-19 season, they lost 4-1 against the Rockets. Then during the 2020 bubble, they end up losing in 7 games against the Denver Nuggets, who were on their come-up. Then the following season, which was even more heartbreaking, was them losing 4-2 against the Clippers, especially with Kawhi Leonard not playing the last 2 games. So that series was tied up 2-2, and Paul George was still able to carry the Clippers over the hump, eliminating the Utah Jazz. Then in the following calendar year, the 2021-2022 season, Jalen Brunson on his rise was still able to carry the Mavericks, being up 2-1 after the first 3 games. And within the early portion of that battle, he was able to outperform Donovan Mitchell, especially with that 41-point game performance. And eventually Luka came back into the lineup to finish up the series, and that became the end of that Utah Jazz season, because after following their elimination, not only Rudy Gobert was traded, but also Donovan Mitchell. Then in the following season, the 2022-2023 calendar year, Mitchell once again in the Eastern Conference this time, lost to Jalen Brunson for yet another first-round exit. And finally, in the 2024-2025 season, the Cavs had a dominant year, which they sat on top of the Eastern Conference for the whole season, but yet suffered a 4-1 loss to the Indiana Pacers. So there's definitely a referendum on Donovan Mitchell as far as his star power and his ability to lead a team past a certain point in the playoffs. Interesting enough, KCP had brought it up, and that's the beautiful thing about this player podcast landscape. The shit talking and some of the sentiments are going to spill out from time to time, and it makes for great, interesting conversation.
Do you categorize Halliburton as a superstar?
No. That's what we're going off of. And even I wouldn't even like build a team around Donovan Mitchell either.
Why wouldn't you build one around Donovan?
He's a superstar, but like to superstars can win me games. Can he do that consistently every night? Go out there and try to win me a game?
I mean,
can he average 25, 8 and 8?
Yes. Well, I don't know about 8 and 8, but I would say
Bron did his whole career.
But I'm saying Donovan Mitchell
We
is
talking about superstars though. Like we talking about getting teams involved, getting players involved, like going out and like when my team need me to win, I'm gonna go get this win.
Now that term superstar is thrown around the NBA very loosely, not only by fans, but as well as media members. And there's always been, no matter what era, only a handful of superstars. Right now, the league really only has Giannis, SGA, Stephen Curry, Luka, and because he's still in the beginning phases of his career, but he's knocking on that door, is Anthony Edwards. And also I should throw in Kevin Durant, but these guys are on their downhill. Him and LeBron, they're on the downhill, and maybe 2 seasons from now, Stephen Curry might be off that list. But in their primes, it was Kevin Durant, LeBron James, Stephen Curry, and Kawhi Leonard. Those were really the only superstars of the, I would say, mid-2010s. Everybody else was stars and below. And once again, those kinds of players can get you over the hump, and they could basically carry you to final appearances. That's what really makes a superstar. And once again, throughout NBA history, there's only been a handful of superstars, barely, from season to season.
I can't do that with Donovan Mitchell. And I'm 50-50 with Halliburton because Halliburton can average 25, 8, 8. I
see it.
He's just not for me. It's not. It's not. He's clutch now, but like consistently throughout the game. I need you to be consistent with shooting the ball, your playmaking, all that. I don't think he's getting there. But it's still inconsistent.
Donovan Mitchell and Tyrese Halliburton almost kind of fit in the same category. They're definitely stars, but they need the right cast members around them. Tyrese Halliburton and the way the Indiana Pacers have been constructed is actually the perfect type of casting you want around a player like that. They have a lot of system guys like Nembhard, Naismith, Mathurin coming off the bench, Ben Shepherd, Obi Toppin. Just having a lot of players not only who could defend out there in the perimeter, but they could also play in his style, that up and down tempo. They could shoot threes. Their defense as a whole can tire teams out, as they have a lot of athletic bodies that can wear down other teams' perimeter stars. Guys like Nembhard, Naismith, Mathurin, Ben Shepherd. They play great perimeter defense as a unit, and we've seen that play out in the NBA Finals. That's why it went all the way to a Game 7, and Tyrese Halliburton was literally on one leg for the last 3 games of the series, and these guys end up controlling the early portions of Game 7. Even after he went out with the injury, they were still in control, but by the time it hit the 3rd quarter, their offense basically stalled. So Donovan Mitchell, in a way, he has to be put in that same position where he needs the right ensemble of cast members around him. And the Cavs have done a great job with this. The only thing that was left was for them to execute, especially their secondary star in Darius Garland. If you match him up alongside a guy like Pascal Siakam that Tyrese Halliburton has on his team, Pascal completely dominated and had a great playoffs as a whole. Meanwhile, Darius Garland on the other end, I really can't say his performances throughout the playoffs have matched up to the work that Pascal has put in. And these type of conversations are going to get very interesting regarding to stars, because as we enter into the parity era of the NBA and just the amount of global talent coming into the league, even the amount of 2nd round draft picks that are impacting the league. You look at guys like Jalen Brunson, Jokic, hell, even Draymond Green. Those type of stories are going to be more and more reoccurring as the talent pool continues to get really competitive on the global stage. Even look at guys like Jaime Jaquez out in Miami. Those type of guys coming into the league and still having an impact is not going to be an anomaly. But it is what it is. As far as the Cavs, they definitely have set Donovan Mitchell up. We've seen the maturation of guys like Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, and Jarrett Allen. But the only thing now for the Cavs is if everything can actually come together for this team. And going into the 2026 season, with Jason Tatum being out of the picture as well as Tyrese Halliburton, the lane is pretty much wide open as far as competition. They really just got the Knicks. He's going to have to make a way for his teammates to step up big in the playoffs and take his game to a whole nother level, as KCP had alluded to earlier. Because just like the Utah Jazz were actually set up around him to be a good enough team to make deep playoff runs, he's in a very similar situation in Cleveland, and now he just has to execute. Now this will be a continuation of my series, Uncomfortable Conversations Volume 3. As in recent weeks, we've heard various remarks being made by guys like Tracy McGrady and Dwayne Wade in regards to where Kobe Bryant falls within this overall NBA lexicon when it comes to greatness. Now in this segment, we're going to hear from Shaq as he alludes to the fact that he could have dominated and won championships even in the early 2000s, and also Kobe wasn't necessarily the driving force of their three-peat. These comments definitely threw off a lot of Kobe fans as they sometimes kind of rewrite the history as far as that early three-peat, sort of taking away a lot of the credit that Shaq was really the driving force of those championships. And before we hear from Shaq, just to add a little bit more nuance to this conversation, let's not forget when Kobe Bryant in 2004 requested the Lakers to make the decision to choose Shaq or him. Shaq always understood him exiting LA in that early fashion was always going to affect the way that he was going to be remembered. And this definitely has rang true because narrative has definitely shifted even before Kobe Bryant had passed away, that three-peat was sort of a co-championship between the two. Shaq always knew that the way that he was going to be remembered as a Laker was always going to be suppressed due to how abruptly his time in LA came to an end. And make no mistake about it, a lot of his resentment towards Kobe, especially in the mid-2000s, was because of this. And even today, when they mention Laker greats, they do not mention him as much as they should. He's three-peated and won 3 finals MVP as well as a regular season MVP. The only other player that was able to do that in a 3-year span is Michael Jordan. But once again, when it comes to Laker greats, Shaq's name doesn't get tossed out there as much as it should. So as we're about to hear from Shaq, just keep these sentiments in mind. And also after his comments, we're going to get right into the Morris brothers as they begin to check him, because just like many other Kobe stans, they hold Kobe to a high regard, even right below Jordan or even at the same level as Michael Jordan when it comes to that GOAT list. So Shaq reflected on his three-peat era in LA, and he spoke about a few of the dynamics with a young Kobe Bryant on the come up. You guys check it out, and every once in a while, I'll check in.
I say certain things because I know it'll drive him crazy. Like when he first got there at 17, we're not doing that. It's my team. Drive him crazy. So, I heard somebody say one time, difference between, him and him is he went to the gym 5 hours a day. He had to go to the gym 5 hours a day. He came in at 17.
That is facts, and that's something that Kobe Bryant fans do not understand. The dynamics of the NBA back then was very different, and Kobe at the time was not at the same talent level as the top draft picks. Look at all the raw talent that he came in the league with. But that's the beautiful thing about the Mamba mentality, is that you get better day in, day out, and eventually you're going to supersede guys like Allen Iverson, who for the most part was out with his boys, chilling, drinking, staying up all night. But look how talented he was, that he could still perform like that on the court. Just imagine if he had Kobe Bryant's mindset.
When I came in, I was him. I don't need 5 hours of work. I was him when I came in. Understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So, he was 17 and he boom, boom, and he developed that. And I saw, it's like looking at a whole bunch of puppies and you go, move, and the puppy keeps coming back. Move, and he keeps coming back. Move, and then he starts barking, and then he starts biting.
That's the Mamba mentality right there. And Shaq's not lying. As soon as he came into the league, he was him already. If you go back and look at the NBA All-50 ceremony, Shaq was only in the league for less than 3 years, and they already put him on that list. Again, his exit from LA happening so abruptly, Shaq always understood that this was going to affect the way that he was always going to be remembered in LA. And it rings true even to today. A lot of that animosity that we've seen Shaq and Kobe have around 2005, 6, 7, 8, on Shaq's side, a lot of it comes from this. Is that he knew Kobe kicking him out was going to affect the way that he was going to be remembered.
Now you got a killer on your hand. So you don't want to speak finesse to a killer. You talk killer talk. This is my team, punk. What? And it would just drive him crazy because I know that I needed somebody else. And I realized that in playing with Penny. See, a lot of people don't realize Penny was Kobe before Kobe.
Yep. That's another prime example. Kobe did not come into the league looking like that. Once again, that's the Mamba mentality. You put in the work day in, day out, and eventually you're going to supersede the other guys.
And Penny came in like that. Kobe had to develop that, but Penny came in like that.
It's a form of tough love.
Yes, that's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
Because when it comes to leadership, you focus on the task or you focus on the relationship. I focus on the task.
Shaq at the time, all the pressure was on him to win. See, he'd been in the finals almost 8 years before him and Kobe got there. And the noise was getting louder and louder as far as Shaquille O'Neal not reaching up to his potential. So that's why he was focused on the task. All the pressure of those championships in 2000, 2001, 2002 was really on Shaq.
Like I will call you one time and tell you that was terrible what you did, just to see your response. If you don't talk back and you do better, now I know I got a killer on my hand. If you give me a bunch of excuses, now I know I got it. Next time I'm not going to talk to you. I'm going to call your manager. Like, because I want to see you and you go to that next level. But I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Never going to sugarcoat it. Like when you love and care about somebody, you want to see them going, you can't sugarcoat it.
Now that scenario is interesting for a number of reasons. Kobe Bryant was trying to apply that same pressure on Dwight Howard when he first came to LA. But because of Dwight Howard's personality, he took it another way. And eventually we seen him walk out in free agency. But that was Kobe Bryant testing him the same way Shaq tested Kobe, with the whole aura of you got to punch me in the face in order to take this team away from me. Once again, Kobe Bryant's a killer. He was willing to punch Shaq in the face to take the Lakers away from him. That's the craziest part about Kobe. That is one crazy motherfucker, man. But he wanted it that bad. So a lot of the Kobe Bryant fans were upset about Shaq's comments, even though they do ring true. And Shaq had to sit down with the Morris brothers, where just like many other Kobe Bryant fans, they questioned Tracy McGrady on why he felt that if he got swapped out with Shaq, he would have the same results. And when we take a step back and just look at what they're really saying, from Tracy McGrady to the Morris brothers, is that they're low-key putting Shaq on a high pedestal. Again, even to this day, there has never been a player that has dominated in the way that Shaq does. And it's really crazy to put this in perspective, that Shaq, for the most part in his later years in LA, he was out of shape and he still dominated and won championships. That's how good he was.
T-Mac made a statement the other day, and I'm going to answer after you guys answer. He said, if you switch him and Kobe out, as far as playing with me, the outcome is the same. You agree or disagree?
No, you're not just saying you switching out with Kobe and you're gonna be what Kobe was. That's not. Yeah, I don't agree with nothing that. Nothing away from T-Mac. Great player. Oh, you not Kobe. Yeah, and that mentality too.
I might have to disagree.
Shaq already having a rebuttal because he understands that he was a dominant force, and in his mind, he still remembers Kobe being a young pup, him not being as experienced. Also, Shaq appearing in the finals with 3 different teams with 3 all-time guards, Penny Hardaway, Kobe Bryant, and Dwayne Wade. That's how dominant Shaq was. And even after leaving LA, he finished top 3 in the MVP voting list year in, year out in the mid-2000s.
And is though, big fella, is the mentality. Like it was on, like that killer mentality. Everybody didn't have that. Like he was a great player. Don't get me wrong, but it was times that Mike and Kobe, I felt like that Mike gave Kobe something that nobody else would be able to even imitate and be able to like have that mentality. A lot of players no other players had it, really.
I agree with you saying, but I'm saying, I didn't look at it like that. That's why I like everybody's opinion. You don't think I could have won 3 with T-Mac? I think I could have.
Yeah, for sure.
T-Mac was a bad boy.
But then it was bad.
Now right here, I'm going to shoot Kobe Bryant some bail. I'm not sure if T-Mac had it in him the way Kobe was carrying the Lakers when Shaq showed up all fat and sloppy. He was carrying them through the regular season in those last few years. I don't know if T-Mac, because of his back issues, was going to be able to carry that kind of load.
T-Mac was a bad boy.
I feel like time you put any of the
you could say that about outside of T-Mac. You could say a lot of them. Put him next to you at that time.
Good point. All right, what about Vince? Me and Vince.
I feel like
3 in a row.
I feel like people downplay Vince. They just think he a dunker. Vince was one of the most talented players ever played.
I believe the same.
That's another player that had more raw talent than Kobe Bryant did. You see, again, there goes that Mamba mentality. T-Mac, Vince Carter, these guys had more natural ability than Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant is not as fast as Michael Jordan. He doesn't have the hand size. He doesn't have the speed. He's not as efficient. but him and the Mamba mentality, just putting in the work day in, day out, even being obsessive as to figuring out the way he lands on the floor after taking his jumper. That type of mentality, you're eventually going to be great regardless.
Actually, when he said that, a lot of people hit me, but T-Mac was a bad boy.
Yeah, for sure. He was. And I feel like even not saying it, it's just like Kobe just watching, playing in the league, and was a fan, and like everybody watched T-Mac. Everybody knew how good T-Mac was, but if you asking a question about him or Kobe Bryant, I don't know what team they was on. If he, obviously everybody's path different, but like what Kobe has, there was only one other player that's the greatest player in the world has. Like they're the only two that has that.
So we always hear about the GOAT debates. We all play, and I know we're friends with some of these people. My take on it is, doesn't matter who you pick, I want to hear the right names. So somehow it's just LeBron and Jordan.
Facts. Now Shaq right here touches on a point that it goes over a lot of NBA fans, because sometimes we're always going to get caught up in our own era. But when it comes to GOATness or just winning and just overall game impact, there are levels to this. There's certain guys that you could put them on shitty teams, they're still going to make the playoffs. They're still even going to win a couple rounds. There's levels to this. Even guys like Hakeem Olajuwon, who was basically a Giannis with a jump shot and post-up moves. He made the finals in his sophomore season, and he still was able to eventually down the line win the NBA championship. Meanwhile, in the same season, winning Defensive Player of the Year. There's levels to that GOAT conversation, and it gets uncomfortable when you got to factor in guys that get overlooked like him into that top 10, top 11. Again, there's levels to this. And right before we continue here from Shaq, we're going to jump real quick and listen to Kobe Bryant speak about the levels of GOATness after his three-peat. He was asked about this during his Disney World trip, and he revealed the truth about his placement among certain names when it comes to the levels of greatness and overall impact on a team. You guys check it out, and every once in a while, I'll check in.
Can you give me your all-time starting five?
Oh, of all time?
All time.
Magic at the point. MJ at the 2. Larry Bird at the 3. Bill Russell at the 4. This is tough. Wilt at the 5.
Now notice all those names, high overall impact right away as soon as they got into the league. And you can fit Kareem overall in that top 5, because Kareem, he's been so dominant at every single level. Even at the high school level, they had to change the rules about the game because he was so dominant. But Kobe Bryant right here gets asked about where does he fall within that lexicon. And look at his reaction, because this is the real answer right here.
And I'm struggling because, Kareem and Wilt, they're neck and neck. So,
Are you sixth man?
No, dude, I'm nowhere near that stuff, man.
Now, Kobe gave his honest answer, but peep the names he's about to list, because there are other high impact guys as soon as they came into the league that they brought their teams automatically to certain levels. Listen to the names that he's about to list.
You still got Jerry West, you still got Oscar Robertson, you still got Walt Frazier, you still got Bob Petty, you still got, the list goes on and on and on.
Those are high impact players, all of them. Those are high impact players. As soon as they came into their team automatically went up to a certain level. So sometimes when you hear guys like Shaq speak, they're speaking from the perspective of guys that are standing on the mountaintop who automatically, when they go to a team, it's a high impact player. That team is going to elevate all the way up to a certain level automatically. There is no missing the playoffs. That right there, unfortunately, is where a lot of the Kobe Bryant stands. I don't even want to say Laker fans. The Kobe Bryant stands, they kind of get that mixed up. Even for the overall Laker greats, as far as impact, you got to look at guys like Magic and Kareem. They're going to be up there. And me, myself, coming out of NYC, one of our great baseball legends in the Yankees, which is a very similar franchise to the Lakers as far as having so many greats. Even though a lot of us current day have Derek Jeter as possibly one of the greatest Yankees, we do have the understanding that there are players that had came in and wore the uniform and had greater impact and better overall talent. And that's something right there. I believe that's a gap between Laker fans and a lot of the legends that had came into that building. There's a misunderstanding. They have no idea of the guys who came into that building and some of the overall impact that they had on the game. A lot of the current day Laker fans, even to this day, have no real awareness of the impact of guys like Elgin Baylor, who pretty much changed the way black players in the NBA was perceived. They were mostly steals and rebound and hustle guys. But when he got there, it showed other NBA teams that they could rely on black players, as Elgin Baylor averaged over 35 points a game in multiple seasons. And he's one of the reasons why Jerry West got to so many championships. But it shows you how many high impactful guys that had worn that Lakers uniform, very similar to the New York Yankees. It's kind of amazing how the NBA, by the time Elgin Baylor had came into the league, did not necessarily play the game through a black player as far as him being ball dominant and scoring. And 20 years later from that date, they went from that type of stereotyping to having Michael Jordan be the face of the whole league. Once again, you fellas have your Googles, do the research, it's all there. The history cannot be erased once you dig through all the narratives.
How about your all-time Lakers starting five?
All-time Lakers starting five. Let's see, you gotta go with Magic. It's funny because a lot of these players are in my five, you know, or in the top 10 of all time. You're talking about Magic.
Once again, right here, Kobe Bryant acknowledging some of the greats to ever play the game have worn the Laker uniform. Very similar to baseball. Some of the greats of all time have worn the Yankee uniform. And in New York City, those legends get respect. But on the other side of the country, when it comes to the Lakers, because they've had so much success within the last, I would say 20 to 30 years, they kind of forget some of the players that came through the building before those current day stars.
Magic, talking about Jerry West, Elgin Baylor.
Kobe Bryant knows his history. There goes Elgin Baylor. He's one of the reasons why NBA teams start to expand on the African-American players outside of just hustling and getting steals and playing defense. The numbers are there in the record books. Elgin Baylor has multiple seasons where he's averaging 35 points a game.
Magic, talking about Jerry West, Elgin Baylor, Kareem, and Wilt.
All right, you're going to run a double center offense?
Yeah, well, we do too, you know, with Powell and Andrew. So.
Shout out to Kobe Bryant right there. He definitely is a savant of the game. And that's something we cannot say for today's modern player. A lot of guys like Anthony Edwards have made certain comments where you could tell they do not know the history of the game. And a lot of the things that they're bringing to the game today, it's really nothing new. It's literally copy and paste. They're just not aware of the levels of inspiration from decade to decade. Just like how Michael Jordan modeled his game after David Thompson.
So we always hear about the GOAT debates. We all play, and I know we're friends with some of these people. My take on it is, doesn't matter who you pick, I want to hear the right names. So somehow it's just LeBron and Jordan. But my argument is, shouldn't Kobe be in that conversation?
Without a question. Without a question.
Like,
Yeah, without a question.
doesn't matter, like me, I pick Mike.
Right.
Play with Kobe, play with LeBron, both extraordinarily great, but Mike was that guy. To me, Mike is the greatest of all time, but I just hear people go straight from Mike to LeBron and no Kobe.
Yeah.
What's your...
Man, Shaq, people go straight from Mike to LeBron, and there's no Magic Johnson, there's no Larry Bird, there's no Kareem. There's a few names that could be argued to be in that mix, and they're not in there. And it's very shameful that Magic Johnson right away should not be tossed in that level. Him along with Larry Bird, they only played about 12 to 13 years. But yet Magic Johnson has achieved more success on the court than LeBron in 20. And Larry Bird, for the most part, had achieved what LeBron did in 12 years until LeBron got his 4th championship in the bubble in 2020. The history books cannot be erased.
Your take on that?
I think Magic should be in there somewhere too. Like, I think Magic, if, you know, what happened didn't happen, I think he had a chance to be one of the greatest.
Magic contracted the HIV virus while he was in his prime. Sometimes the narrative makes it seem like Magic was an older player. No, Magic was in his prime when he caught the HIV infection. I believe he was 31, about to turn 32 years old. So he was still relatively in his prime.
What about Steph Curry?
It's over Magic or just
No.
one of the greatest?
In the
Or
conversation.
One of the greatest?
That's a conversation a lot of people are not ready for. It is going to be very hard to leave Stephen Curry out of that top 10. It's going to be very, very difficult. And that's not even including overall impact on the game itself. It's kind of crazy because the last time we seen that level of impact was from Michael Jordan. The fact that teams realize that they can actually win championships and have great success outside of just building around the center. He sort of changed the way even GMs thought about building teams. And Stephen Curry has changed the game in a way where now taking 60-foot three-point shots or just taking three-point shots in transition when you have a 3-on-1 situation is not even perceived as a crazy shot.
Listen,
yeah, for sure.
There's 8 billion people in the world. Everybody's going to have their opinion, but I would like to hear the proper criteria.
Yeah, for sure.
Whoever you pick. So, do you think Steph Curry should be there? I do.
I think he's one of the greatest that played the game. He changed the game. He was a part of changing the game.
Kareem's in the conversation.
Without a question.
Kareem.
Wilt.
Is Wilt in the conversation?
Yeah,
I believe.
I don't think so.
Oh, interesting. Why?
You only had 2.
Yo, Shaq really wants to be on that pedestal when it comes to Laker fans thinking about their all-time greats. And it's definitely true. The way Shaq has success in LA, he should be remembered either on the same level or even greater than Wilt.
2 rings.
So rings are very important in this conversation.
I don't think so.
You don't think so? Why
I don't
not?
think so. I mean, because it's like,
Come on
like
now.
a lot of players, no, not saying that he shouldn't, but just winning anyway is hard to do. So for somebody to win 2, you can't. I don't think it's just like, yeah, he ain't win enough. Like you won 2, that's enough. Some people can't win at all. You got a lot of greats that haven't won, and their career is downplayed because they didn't win, but they were great basketball players. You know what I'm saying? So the criteria,
But we're
fluctuates.
talking the greatest of all time.
Yeah.
Facts. Tell him, Shaq. There's impact in winning. Those 2 things don't disappear. If you look at the names, impact and winning, that shit don't change.
Yeah. So is that like a top 5 list, or is that just like the greatest?
Mine is Mike, LeBron, and Kobe.
Mine's-
Oh, so Steph's not in your conversation.
No, he's
So
not.
we're talking about the 3 greatest of all time. Let's just put the number on it.
No, he's not in anybody's conversation. I'm saying, but should he be added? That's
Right,
what I'm
but
asking.
hold on. You always ask that question, but now you're saying he's not in your
I'm not saying he's not. I'm saying should he be added? I've already made mine. Michael Jordan is the greatest of all time.
Yeah.
Period.
Gotcha.
That's my statement.
Does Bill Russell get in this conversation?
He should. He should
Okay.
be.
That's hard. When you
It
have
is
that
hard,
conversation, it's like, you don't
Because also
know
you think
what-
about Wilt, and you think about like Jerry West. They were on the non-Celtics teams where those guys didn't switch teams ever.
right.
They had like 10 guys that are in the Hall of Fame, and it's like one dude versus all of them.
Right.
And then we're judging them on.
Once again, there goes the Elgin Baylor talk. You see how Elgin Baylor's name is not tossed in as Jerry West's teammate? He's one of the reasons why Jerry West got to so many finals. And unfortunately for him, he had to retire due to injury, and then the Lakers had ended up winning the championship the following season. But another interesting point that was brought up was the lack of player mobility. See, if certain teams dominated right away, there was no player movement. The NBA throughout the 80s, the players went through a 7-year lawsuit just to get free agency. And when you factor in the rules of the game, the fact that the game was very restrictive compared to the freedom of movement that we see today, it begins to get tough to make an all-time list because you can't compare era to era. I'm always saying this, but the rules used to be so restrictive that on a fast break, if guys were past the ball and they bobbled it for a quick second, that's an automatic travel. Most spin moves were a travel. There was no three-point line. Also, guys just chucking up threes was not a normal shot until Stephen Curry and Mark Jackson made it a normal shot. There's just way too many factors to make a real GOAT list. But there should be a Mount Rushmore as far as winners and overall impact in the NBA.
Not beating them.
Yeah, right.
But then we're also giving Bill Russell credit for 11. Like there's a lot of arguments that argue against themselves. But Will also was averaging 50 points per game for a season.
That's a lot.
And those are our 3. I think Mike, Kobe, Bryant. You figure it out. Mike is the greatest of all time. Kobe cannot be the closest to Mike and not be top 3 greatest of all time. That doesn't even sound right.
That last statement right there is where Laker fans really get it confused. They automatically put Kobe right next to Jordan, but if you look at both of their stats, you just line it up career-wise, going from year to year, there's not one stat you could point at to say Kobe Bryant is better than Michael Jordan. Not one stat. Once again, let's listen to that exact comment, because this is where the confusion really comes from. And it's hard for a lot of Kobe stans, not Laker fans, but Kobe stans, to understand.
And those are our 3. I think Mike, Kobe, Bryant. You figure it out. Mike is the greatest of all time. Kobe cannot be the closest to Mike and not be top 3 greatest of all time. That doesn't even sound right.
Yeah, one of the Morris brothers got to actually line up the stats and show what makes him exactly on the same level as Jordan. Like, what's the one stat that shows you as far as efficiency, steals, rebounds, points? You got to show us what makes him on that same level automatically, because that's an assumption that they make off rip, because Kobe had the same mannerisms as far as his on-court motions, the way he shot the fadeaway, the way he dribbled the ball, sometimes having his tongue out. He imitated a lot of the mannerisms from Jordan, and he did it so much that he used to wear a baldy when he was in high school, and he started growing the fro because the overall narrative was growing louder and louder that he was completely copying Jordan. That's when you start to hear him say his favorite play was Jerry West, and he mentioned even Mike D'Antoni at a time because he himself grew up in Europe, and all this extra dumb shit to throw you off, because that's the kind of person Kobe was. He did a lot of shit to throw you off, but in reality, Jordan was his favorite player of all time. But it is what it is. In recent weeks, a lot of players, because of the media landscape and just the way the overall podcasting field is, a lot of the ego once in a while is going to come out. You hear comments from T-Mac, D-Wade, Shaq. A lot of these guys are legends, no doubt. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of missing nuances that need to be brought up when they have these type of discussions. And besides making a GOAT list, maybe there should be more of a focus on a Mount Rushmore of just overall impact and winning. So as we go into more off seasons with this new CBA in place, the NBA players are starting to recognize that the rules have become very restrictive. First of all, player movement has been slowly stripped away. A lot of productive players, I would say guys that would rank anywhere from the 15th best player to about the 25th to 30th. Guys that are co-stars like Julius Randle, Jimmy Butler, James Harden. A lot of these guys have barely gotten pay increases, even though the NBA TV deal is twice as much. Julius Randle right now as the co-star alongside Anthony Edwards, coming off of 2 All-Star seasons and 2 NBA selections, has taken a negative 16% pay increase. Even guys like Emmanuel Quickley right now is making more money than him with way less responsibilities. Jimmy Butler is another player that basically almost had to hold out during the regular season and force a trade to the Golden State Warriors in order to get paid. James Harden, coming off an all-star season with the Clippers, has only gotten an 11% increase. And the same thing would apply to Brandon Ingram, being a second overall pick, still productive. The deal he took in his 7th season only gave him an 11% increase. So under the old rules, a lot of these guys would have gotten normal pay bumps. And this is under the old TV deal, which was for way less money. And just to add more nuance on the restrictions of player movement, Jonathan Kuminga and Cam Thomas both are restricted free agents, which basically no longer exist because no other teams have cap space due to the fact that they're scared to hit that second apron. So the NBA overall, with all the teams, they're sort of hard capped. There's a lot of restrictions on what happens when they do hit that second apron. It's not necessarily about the luxury tax bills. It's all the restrictions on improving teams' rosters. Guys have to fish in the minimum player market, while at the same time, if they continuously hit that second apron from year to year, they end up getting their first round draft picks 7 years out, pushed all the way back to the end of the first round. So in this segment, we're going to hear from a few NBA players as they wake up to the reality of this new CBA. We're going to hear from Cam Thomas, Duncan Robinson, Georgia Yang, and former player union president, CJ McCollum. You guys check it out, and every once in a while, I'll check in.
I was fortunate enough to see some of the changes that have occurred in the league. Obviously, seeing free agency in 2017, right, when there was a big spike in pay and performance, and seeing the COVID years, right, 2020, what that was like, what went into kind of preparing for the bubble, working alongside CP, and just kind of seeing what went into going to the bubble, what went into that season, that return to play, what that looked like from no fans to having fans, all those things we went through, and then to the last CBA we just went through, and then just seeing the new TV deal and how great the game has continued to look, at how great the game has continued to grow. I think the game is in a great place, and there's obviously things that we can do better as athletes, right, in terms of our day-to-day stuff, but there's also things that we can do better in partnership with the league, right? Like, the CBA is not perfect. Like, I've never gone on the record saying that, but everything is negotiation. And I think we're at that point now where the pod is continuing to grow. Guys are continuing to make more money, and there's a lot of conversations about mid-level. There's a lot of conversations about the non-taxpayer at mid-level. There's a lot of conversations about the vet minimum, the max, and kind of where things are. But from a statistical standpoint, we're heading in a really good direction. Guys are making more money, and the mid-level is not being neglected, and the statistics show it. Although there are some things that can be improved upon in the CBA. Obviously, we talk about the second apron. We talk about aggregating salaries, and, there's a lot more player movement right now.
No, CJ, there's not a lot more player movement. There might be player movement among the mid-level guys, but as far as the top guys, only Paul George in recent years really is the only one that hit free agency. You see, there's a number of things happening right now. You got older stars who are not necessarily aging out compared to other players historically, and at the same time you have a large pool of global talent coming into the NBA from all the years of investment that they've made throughout the various countries, just coming up with development camps, etc., etc. So there's quite a few things that are culminating at the same time, and it's creating this sort of bubble of too much talent being in the league. That's what we're hearing of expansion talks so much. But that might not necessarily be a good thing, because you never know, the next generation of stars might age out a lot earlier due to all the professionalizing that's happening from a youth standpoint. You see Kevin Durant, LeBron James, Stephen Curry, they're almost like the last of the Mohegans when it comes to guys that are coming up through AAU, but they didn't necessarily at a very young age, almost at a professional level, just become so specialized, like guys like LaMelo Ball and that newer crop of generation that's coming into the league. That's why those guys are breaking down a lot quicker.
People have talked about free agency and how there's changes. A lot of guys are moving more than they have before, and there's also more parity in the league, and there's a lot of things that are going on within the league. But this wasn't like a my agenda type of situation. We had a collective bargaining agreement to try to do what's best for the players, and things were proposed, and we had to kind of have a conversation about it to kind of figure out what was best. But all in all, I think we're heading in a good direction, and the more dialogue that we can have, the more conversation that we can have in terms of ways to grow the game, the more players can continue to voice, their thoughts and opinions, more so amongst us as players, so that we can kind of go to the bargaining table and have those discussions. I think it'll be better. But I think the game has grown immensely, from 2013 to 2025. Guys make more money. Our licensing checks have increased, and you look at the TV deal, and you look at some of the things that we've negotiated on behalf of the players through the union, including our 2K deal. Like, we're doing really well.
Apron stuff's been obviously a big topic last couple months. Is some of this just there's the way that the league is covered is different? And so that there's always been a cap. There have always been these different restrictions for team building and things like that. But things are amplified in a way differently now because there's so many, whether it is social media or there are people that are covering the details of these things differently than maybe they were, 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah, I just think that's, across every league right now, you're seeing that just in different ways. And that's kind of how our league is being scrutinized in a way and looked at in a very critical lens. I think part of it is that we have such big voices as a group, and there's not many of us as NBA players, compared to maybe some other leagues or some other leagues of similar pay level. So I just think that's what comes with it. And it's something that we'll continue to deal with and something that we'll continue to address. And obviously we want what's best for our game. I think the fans want the most entertaining, competitive product possible. So, all the dialogue, in my opinion, is, in some capacity, just trying to get us towards, a really good product.
Even with the second apron, I think it's important to realize, teams on average are spending more than they ever have before. And if you look at what's happened historically with the salary cap, right? With average teams spending, reaching the luxury tax hold, like let's say, there's obviously some people have referred to it as a hard cap. A hard cap is something that you can't go over. Second apron is.
It's basically become a hard cap, CJ. Teams definitely do not want to go over that. It's not even necessarily about the tax dollars. It's just so much restrictions that come from it. And in a way, it gives owners an excuse not to pay people. We've seen Luka get traded because of the cost that would happen around his contract. Not necessarily his contract is the reason why the Mavericks got rid of him. They just weren't confident in giving him the money and then spending extra money of putting a competitive team around him and paying luxury tax every single season, while at the same time being reduced to how they can improve the team going from year to year. God forbid that they get an injury, it'll be very hard to replace certain key guys, because if you go over the second apron, you're restricted on what players you can actually pick up, the way you could do trades, no more 2-for-1s, salaries have to match exactly to the T, and also your first round picks 7 years out get pushed back to the end of the first round. So this has basically become a hard cap. And in a way, the owners, they sort of worked it out with the players where it looks good on paper. They get 53% of the revenue. But under these new CBA rules, we've seen it comes with a lot of restrictions. The 65-game rule, which is also attached to individual awards like MVP and all NBA team selections, which those awards are also tied to players getting certain Supermax deals. Tyrese Halliburton so far was one of these guys that almost fell victim to not getting a max deal because he came down with an injury, and we've seen him almost risk his career in order to get paid. These were not stipulations that were going on in the last CBA. Guys were protected. If they were stars, they got injured during a contract year, they would still get paid. We see certain guys that are top picks, as long as they're performing, they will still get paid. This is no longer the case today. So on paper, a lot of these things look good. Teams are spending more money, but at the same time, teams have a lot of excuses of reasons why not to pay guys. Going back to 2017, the NBA owners were not happy about all that player movement. So they aligned the contracts in a way where players would have to sacrifice money if they wanted to leave teams. And players still ended up making that choice, which cost these teams a lot of money. Think about the jersey sales. Now a lot of jerseys have to almost be put up for free or put up for auction, because you got guys like Paul George leaving teams, Kawhi Leonard, etc., etc. So player movement has not been good business for the NBA owners, and they have slowly crafted out player movement in this new CBA, as well as reasons why not to pay guys.
A hard cap is something that you can't go over. Second apron is like a hard cap, but you can actually go over it. You just have to come out of pocket for it. Historically, the last 10, 20 years, two teams have historically gone into what would have been an invincible second apron over the last, 15, 20 years. We know who those teams have been historically, but I think the important thing to remember is that the middle class, is not being affected. I think they've talked about that. There is more movement. Guys are getting traded more. There's more movement. Teams are strategically kind of figuring out when they would like to spend money, right? Based on what free agents may be available. There's a free agent that could be available from the Milwaukee Bucks soon. Like, there's things that are occurring within the league that may deter teams from wanting to spend money. But I think the biggest thing is figuring out what the members want. Like, that's the biggest thing. Like, I didn't devise a plan to try to like conquer the world. Like, I don't have that much power. I didn't have that much power. I didn't have that much control. It's important that members kind of express themselves, especially to the committee and to the union, as to what they really truly care about, whether that's protecting the middle class, whether that's protecting guys that are on minimums, salaries. Like, those things are really important, really crucial.
And those things are hard for players to make happen, because we have to keep in mind the average lifespan of an NBA player's career is 5 years. So there's constantly a revolving door of players. And at the same time, if you look at the player reps for most NBA teams, it's really the guy that's at the end of the bench, because most players who have a voice don't want to spend the time and effort to commit to such a task that's really being done for free. Again, We just seen CJ mention he did everything he could with the power he had. Going up against all these billionaire owners with teams of lawyers who have history of just understanding contract language. They crafted this new CBA very well to get rid of player movement while at the same time getting a lot of TV revenue coming in and making it hard for those players to cash in on that revenue split. It looks good on paper. The NBA players take 53% of revenue, but when you see guys like Tyrese Halliburton almost not get a Supermax deal, had to almost risk his career while playing injured just to hit the 65 games so he can get that Supermax, you see where things begin to get a little shaky.
In terms of development and growth within our league. But I think the moral of the story is a lot of guys and girls work hard behind the scenes to make sure that we have what we need on a day-to-day basis, whether that's support for guys from the mental health side, whether that's education, whether that's advancement, whether that's opportunities. Obviously, there's a lot of, confrontations that players have had, whether that's with referees, whether that's with specific teams. There's problems that players are having right now with, being in contract years and their minutes being changed or being receiving DNPs consistently. So there's a lot of issues.
AKA Jonathan Kuminga. He's having a lot of issues. Same thing for Cam Thomas. The Nets are leveraging the fact that most teams do not necessarily have the cap space to pay him. So what does restricted free agency really mean for these two players? Does it really even exist anymore?
Issues that we have within this league, and the union's job is to try to figure out ways to help people. But I think there's a misconception that players aren't being compensated the same ways they have in the past. That's not true. Guys are making more money than they ever have. The middle class is making more money than they ever have before. But we do need to figure out, how to prevent, there's a lot of player movement. Guys are having to leave their teams to get more money. Other teams are spending money, Dennis Schroeder,
I don't know why CJ keeps saying that. There's a lot of player movement. Paul George is the only superstar in recent years that has hit free agency. For the most part, everybody else had just re-signed their deals. You could even make the argument nowadays you have to almost force a trade in order to get the contract that you want. We've seen Jimmy Butler force a trade to Golden State and get that contract that he wanted. Same thing for Brandon Ingram in a way. Had he not gotten traded, who knows what kind of deal he would have gotten in the open market. And being a second overall pick in his first opportunity to get a large contract, he barely got a pay bump. And this is with him being a productive player. He may not be an all-star or superstar, but he's still productive for being a top 2 pick. Normally those guys get a nice little pay bump in that first year of eligibility to get a real contract.
He was able to, $15, $16 million, but he wasn't able to be retained by his team. People talk about the Celtics. They talk about, certain teams getting off salary or making decisions, but it's also important to remember that injuries impact decision-making, right? Unfortunately, Jason Tatum gets hurt. It changes the trajectory of that team. It changes teams' windows.
Injuries have always impacted players' salaries, no matter what decade or what era of NBA basketball we're talking about.
Goes out, with an injury that changes Indiana's perception of that team. It changes the window for a little bit because, one of the star players, best players is going to be out. But, saying that the middle class has been destroyed or that, they're not, getting their fair share or their fair amount of money, it's just factually not true.
And also with the new CBA, we're seeing something that has never really been done before. Teams that have 2 or more players with high salaries are actually keeping two-way guys on their roster, or players that have a lot of guys with high team salaries like the Knicks, where they're paying OG Anunoby, Karl Anthony Towns, and Jalen Brunson. They're keeping a lot of G League guys in their 14th and 15th slot. So now a lot of teams are starting to adopt the fact that they can keep a bunch of two-way guys on their teams, and they really only have 13 guys with guaranteed contracts. That's been a new trick that NBA GMs have been rolling out, and eventually the landscape will end up being there's actually less guaranteed spots.
We have the stats.
But one thing people don't understand is what your stats portray and what you think you're worth is not sometimes what you're worth. It's what you're worth is what someone's willing to pay you. That's really what it comes down to. So where it's I averaged, 13 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists. I should be getting X amount of $1 million. Well, that's great. But if one team has cap space and you don't want to take the mid-level,
it's not flawless, but it's all a negotiation. And I think there's a lot of noise around the lack of player movement because there used to be a lot more big splashes in free agency, and now it's more of an extension league. If we're being honest, a lot of guys are getting extensions because teams may have money and may not want to spend it, or they may not have it or want to dip their toe in that. And you talked about it. How many teams realistically have a chance of winning a championship every year?
Yeah, maybe 8 to 10. I mean, think that they can have a chance to. To your point, I think part of, and you sort of mentioned it, you said in 17 it was 4% were max. This past year, 9% were max. So you're talking about that number has more than doubled, going from 4% to 9%.
Since 2017.
Right.
But before the new CBA kicked in 2022, 2023.
It was the same 9%. Yeah. But to your point you were making earlier, that's also coincided with the facts that the max contract is as high as it's ever been because it stayed relative to the cap, and the cap keeps going.
Now, one thing they didn't mention there, because those numbers are interesting, is the fact that from 2017 till now, you have a more globalized talent pool coming in, and you have a lot of aging stars who are not aging out. And also, the rise of two-way players really taking up the last 2 to 3 roster spots because teams are trying to make the numbers match. So you have less roster spots available to players overall, going from team to team. And at the same time, you have a globalized talent pool coming in, and older players are not necessarily aging out, maybe due to modern medicine, or just, it could be the current crop of generation. They're just really that durable. You never know.
So what you're seeing is public outcry of the discrepancy between what guys were making and what guys are making. Now, I actually believe, and I think you could make a strong actual argument, like a guy like Steph Curry is probably the most underpaid guy in the NBA in terms of what he means to a franchise. So I'm not over here saying guys shouldn't be making, this, that, or whatever. Those max guys are in reality what's driving the league. I was just in the meeting, so it was interesting to see that middle market has stayed the same, because I didn't necessarily know that the numbers supported it, but there has been this like public narrative. And that's also just insight into how public narratives can create quote unquote truths that aren't actually there. Like you get people talking about, oh, the middle market's gone or whatever, when, like you said, it very much is exactly the way it's been.
Yeah, but it's not perfect, and I don't think anybody's going out and saying it. There's things that need to change, and as we kind of maneuver through the new waters of the CBA, we got to have those dialogue and those conversations. Minimum guys got to be speaking about their experiences, what it's like. How was your free agency? Mid-level guys, how is your free agency? What's it like? We know that free agency has shifted. It's changed. It's more of an extension league, and that's where we're at.
Those mid-level guys, it's going to be hard for them to speak up because a lot of them, they don't really last long in the league. Again, the average career span of an NBA player is about 4 to 5 years.
But also, more and more teams are going to have money off the books, especially when, like you said before, teams operate based on whether or not they can win. Like, is this our window? How old are our best players? What's the average age of our team? Who's on a rookie deal? Who's not? Who do we have to pay? Who's extension eligible? All those things. And I think another thing that we have to fix in the CBA, and we'll have a discussion about it, and obviously I'm not president anymore, but you shouldn't be punished for drafting well. Like, if you draft well, we've seen some teams be really fortunate in the draft, and now you get to that position Oklahoma City's going through right now, where you got to pay a lot of players who are really good and you draft them. You shouldn't be punished for drafting well. You should be able to pay and keep and retain the players that you've drafted. And when you have those windows to where you really have a chance to compete and win a championship,
we're going to see how they navigate through those windows, because it looks like OKC is setting themselves up to pay their top 3 guys. And at the end of the day, a lot of their mid-level to kind of lower tier rookies, they're going to rotate them in and out with all those draft picks that they have. Once guys like Isaiah Joe, Aaron Wiggins, Cason Wallace, and even Lou Dort to a degree, when he starts getting up there in age, they're going to phase out of these guys real quick and start rolling some more rookies with all those first-round draft picks in. But that won't be the norm, because OKC, the way their team is set up, it's a rarity for sure. But they will begin to show the rest of the league a blueprint of how small markets can navigate through these treacherous waters of just paying all these guys these large contracts.
You shouldn't have such severe restrictions, but those are things that the league and the players union will have to figure out, and there will continue to be a discussion and a dialogue around it. But I think the moral of the story is everything is a negotiation, and the league has done a great job of continuing to help build up the league and be great partners. And I think we've done the same as players, but now it's about collectively figuring out how to make sure that we are putting all our players in the best position to succeed. And the last thing I'll say is one of the things we got to figure out, right? Looking at, a situation where a player is potentially in a contract year and the team, figures out a way to devalue them. Like how do we fix those types of things too? Because those are problems.
How often do you think that happens?
You've been watching the league. Can you name some situations in which that's occurred in the last 2 years?
I would say Brandon Ingram, Cam Thomas, Jonathan Kuminga, the Jimmy Butler situation. Unfortunate for Miami and Pat Riley, they actually violated that rule about resting your superstars. So those suspensions that Jimmy Butler was receiving was actually unnecessary. He wasn't injured. It's not like he was not showing up to work and doing what he had to do. The Heat just chose to discipline him. They were low-key devaluing him in the open market because they knew that he had a player option. They were hoping that him opting into his player option would be his only choice because teams would not be interested.
I mean, I think
you have to do it because we play.
I think that it's hard to, yes, probably, but I think it's hard to say from my vantage point. I think it's hard to say if you're not in the locker room. I think that people are very good at, there's two sides to every story. And like there's an example right now in the Bay. I think that you could probably they would probably there'd be a different conversation about what's going on up there. But I'm like,
AKA he's talking about Jonathan Kuminga.
There's one side from the players, there's one side from the coaches in the front office, and I'm like, I'm not gonna say who's right. It's like I feel like you have to be there for them, but I'm more curious like if you think that that's a thing that happens frequently and it just doesn't usually get out. Like it doesn't usually become like a media story.
I don't necessarily think that it's like teams are consistently not playing good players so they can pay them less or so that their market is dried up. But teams will make you go get an offer sheet. Like go get an offer sheet and bring it back. Like that's common practice.
That's the business of it. Like,
and also with the Kuminga situation, teams are not necessarily looking to throw a crazy number out there in order for Golden State not to match. We've seen Jeremy Lin get a deal like that in the past as a restricted free agent, leaving the Knicks and joining, I believe it was the Houston Rockets. That $25 million a year, that was the number that really scared the Knicks away from matching. So teams today in that landscape, due to the CBA and that second apron serving as a hard cap, they're not necessarily willing to throw out those kinds of numbers, knowing that they have to extend rookies and they also have to build a competitive team around a certain number, not trying to get into that luxury tax.
You say it's like real estate. They're in the business of buying low and you're trying to sell high. I mean, we knew what we got into when we signed up for this. So, I mean, as crazy as it is, like those scenarios, I try not to play them in my head because I don't want to live life cynical and be like, that actually would be something that happened. So I just try and like eliminate that piece out of my mind and just try and focus on like my daily habits and what I'm going to do every day. Because when you start thinking about, oh, they're not playing me because they're devaluing me, then you start actually not looking the best you can be because you're worried about all that other stuff that's going on. And do I think it happens? I really don't have an answer on it because I'm not really focused on that aspect of the basketball game, if I'm being completely honest, as a player at least.
I think we've all seen some experiences in which bonuses, things of that nature, games played. I mean, we all have heard stories of.
But that's only one side.
Yeah, but you can kind of watch a game and. What do you think?
Now, CJ right there just asked Duncan Robinson, former player of the Miami Heat. He was there when Jimmy Butler was around, going back and forth with Pat Riley. And Duncan Robinson just completely laughed. And the way CJ even asked him, what are your thoughts? CJ had this biggest smirk on his face. They already know what it is.
I mean, I think front offices obviously have their own agenda in how they're trying to figure things out. I will say, I personally have been in a situation where if I was probably in another organization, I wouldn't have been put in the situation that I was in, without speaking too vaguely. But when I got paid to come back to Miami, I think there were a lot of organizations that, well, you got paid, we paid you, we're going to play you. And I got put in a situation where I was out of a rotation. At least I knew every day when I showed up in Miami, they were trying to win. And they were doing what they thought was best for the team, in that I got moved from the starting lineup, taken out of the starting lineup. For me, obviously, that's a million things. Back to G saying, like, I'm trying to focus on my habits, this, that, whatever, get through that moment. I do think, because there was like people telling me, oh, if any other place in the league, like, you know, this wouldn't have happened to you. They paid you, they would have rode with you. One, also because if you pay a player, you want to keep the value up in case you do need to trade. You know, because I've been on both sides of the trade stuff. When I was early on in my career and I wasn't making anything, I was an asset in a trade. When I got paid, they couldn't get off me. They would have to attach a pick, and I was valued more in Miami maybe than I was somewhere else. So to that point, I think, of course, a front office has an agenda. I don't know that it always correlates onto the court. I'm sort of in G's camp where, like, I would like to think, and maybe this is naive and altruistic, I would like to think that coaches are going out there every day trying to put together the group that's going to help them win. To the point in the Bay, they've won championships over there. It's hard. I can see the other side of that, where they're like, look, we're trying to make a run, like we're trying to do something. And that's no knock on JK. I mean, he's an amazing player. I just know there's two agendas, right? There's the player side and there's the front office and the coach's side as well.
There are definitely multiple sides to this equation, but one other side that we have to factor in is also the agents. What are they thinking? Because definitely in today's landscape, even though there's a lot more money, all the factors that will create the optics of scarcity are definitely there. And agents will act on that. As we'll hear from the leader of Clutch Sports, LeBron's right-hand man, Rich Paul, as he spoke on the Brandon Ingram situation and how he had to get him traded in order to get a deal because they were not sure if there was something available in the open market. Again, keep in mind, we're talking about a second overall pick who's still productive, putting up 20 plus points per game.
I went through it this year with Brandon Ingram, having him traded from New Orleans, and then during his deal during the season with the Raptors. But that's because I felt like had he got to the open market, there was not much opportunity there. So he's making $40 million a year for the next 3 years. That probably wouldn't have been there for him if we get to quote unquote free agency, you know?
Damn. He's almost making the same amount of money in his rookie scale deal, and they had to make a lot of maneuvers just to make that happen. With Brandon Ingram, this contract only equals to an 11% pay increase. A player with his stature in the last CBA would have got at least 4x the pay bump. And finally, the last part of this segment, Brian Windhorst actually revealed the truth about the new CBA, in which the true number is about only 10 players can actually earn the Supermax in total. You guys check it out, and every once in a while, I'll check in.
The reason that rule exists is they don't want somebody to get their first max contract and then force a trade and then still get the Supermax. They want you to have to stay through your whole first contract to get the Supermax. And then once you sign the Supermax, you're not allowed to be traded for a year.
Yeah, right.
So they want to prevent you from even like getting the Supermax and going, ha ha ha, now that I got it, I'm out of here.
Well, remember, it used to be too that you can only have 2 guys on per team.
That's right.
So that went away with this CBA.
Right. So, by the way, I had a executive tell me the other day, you know, with the new CBA, there's really only 10 max players in this league.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I mean, there's certainly circumstantial max.
Right.
Like, no offense to Paul George in Philly. Right. I mean, I think that's kind of a circumstantial based on the based on everything that happened there. And but yeah, there's probably a, handful of guys.
Yeah, but I would thought Luka was on that list.
Yeah, I thought too.
So it is what it is. As more off seasons continue to go by, the players are starting to wake up on how this overall landscape is really going to turn out. And if you're outside of the top 10 to top 15 players in the NBA, guys like Julius Randle, Jimmy Butler, along those tiers, they're really the ones that are going to get hit hard the most. The guys in the middle are the ones that are really going to get the pay bump, even sometimes surpassing the co-stars, the guys who sit in the top 15 to, I would say, about 25 players in the league. This situation played out with Emmanuel Quickley. Today, he has a larger contract by a few $1 million over guys like Julius Randle. But as the off seasons continue to go by, we'll have a better understanding and have a lot more examples of how teams and GMs are just maneuvering through this overall landscape. The changes are already noticeable, but it's still a little bit too early to judge. So Paul George and his crew sat down with former NBA player Jim Jackson, and a few truths were revealed about the Damian Lillard situation. They talked about how other teams assess Lillard's true market value. Dame also learning the fact that there is no loyalty even among other stars. And they also touched on Giannis's true nature of getting rid of guys, as it reflected on how Jrue Holiday was shipped out of Milwaukee. Paul George right now is in a very similar situation as Damian Lillard, minus the Achilles injury. He's in his mid-30s. He's been very injury prone for at least the past 4 to 5 seasons. He's also a co-star on a team that's trying to capitalize off of Joel Embiid's very narrow window to win a championship. So if he suffers any kind of Achilles or ACL tear, this could be the end for him. But the real question is, will Joel Embiid be as cutthroat as Giannis? Well, Jim Jackson forced a real conversation to happen with Paul George and his crew. You guys check it out, and every once in a while, I'll check in.
Because you can look at it two ways, right? You can look at it from, and I always go back to owners being smart now with this new CBA and the aprons involved, right? I keep dating back to this apron because when you see them shedding moves and shedding players around, it's because they're trying to not eat up these salaries. And you got a team that no longer, in my eyes, I think are contending when you lose someone like Dame. And so I'm not sure what's going to happen. We had conversations actually the other day in the gym of like, damn, do Giannis ask for a trade or like, what's the situation going on there? So in one way, it's like, all right, Dame, we're shedding this money. We're going to pay you your money, but then you get a chance to go and play somewhere and compete for a championship, right? We maybe think the window here is closed. You get healthy, you get a chance to go pick where you want to play. But then there's the side of, you know what I mean? We still believe in you here. We got Giannis. We got a culture. We lost Brook, but we got a young Brook and Miles Turner locked in. We can still win here. So like I'm trying to think of both ways. I always play devil advocate in situations. So
even Paul George understands that Giannis still wants to be relevant, and he's been playing at an MVP level the past couple of seasons. Outside of the basketball court in the public eye, he puts on this very nice guy persona. But to get to his level, he does have a little bit of Mamba mentality, a little bit of Kobe aura to him as far as his competitiveness. But Jim Jackson right here throughout this conversation really brings out what the players are really saying behind closed doors. That's the beautiful thing about this player podcasting landscape. We kind of get the inside scoop on what's really going on.
I always play devil advocate in situations. So
when y'all first heard it, what y'all think? Immediate, first thought. And I'm going to ask you this question too. Do you think Giannis had anything to do with it?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because I believe bringing it.
Now you notice the multiple laughs in the room because when the cameras are off, this is exactly what the players have been talking about.
In Miles Turner, it was part of that deal. And then a report came out that Giannis was aware of the Miles Turner trade, which therefore would mean that he was aware that Dame was up out of here. So I think he did know.
See,
that is interesting.
See, think about it, because here's the thing about when you're a Giannis, a LeBron in that situation that kind of controls your franchise, a Steph. A non-answer is as bad as an answer. So if you like, the coach is like, if management comes to you and says, well, what do you think about coach, or we're going to do this, or we may fire him, and your star player is like, well, you know, you got to do what you got to do as an organization. So he's not saying he's not saying no, that you got to fire him, that you don't have to fire him, but he's not saying yes, I advocate for him. So so a lot of times and I'm gonna get to your point about loyalty. A lot of times it's like a player being in a situation where, look, I didn't know, I didn't say anything, I'm upset, but did you really advocate to have this person stay? Or did you just kind of let the organization, when they asked you the question, do what they had to do? And you can't play that in between.
Now, so far, Giannis in the public eye has been playing that in between as far as perception, going on iShowSpeed's stream, making himself look unsure if he wants to stay in Milwaukee. But if you really look at the actions of the team, they're really in unison with Giannis. They gave up all their first round picks all the way to the end of the decade. I believe the first time they'll be able to cash in on one of those first round picks is in 2031. Also, when you factor in the way they stretched Damian Lillard's contract and added Miles Turner's, it equates to the same amount of money on their books. So they still have the same restrictions on the team as far as who they could put on Miles Turner and Giannis. So it begs the question, would they really made this move if they didn't believe this team should still be relevant?
Ain't never been no loyalty in the league. So stop it. Never has been. Never will be. Because the bottom line is the bottom line in NBA and professional sports. Now, there are outliers. Look at what the Lakers did with Kobe. Back end of his career, they paid him. Okay? They paid him. Jeannie Buss took care of him. You always gonna have an outlier in there. Did you think it was a point where we know who Mr. Miami was, is D-Wade? What happened there?
Great point. Great point by Jim. Jim is cooking right here, boy. That move the Lakers did make for Kobe was an outlier. Because at the end of the day, it hurt that franchise for years. And the way Pat Riley did Dwayne Wade by not giving him that max deal and letting him go to Chicago is the real way most NBA teams operate. So a lot of that loyalty shit that Damian Lillard has branded himself while being in the league, that shit is farce. At the end of the day, with Damian Lillard, Giannis may have realized he's not the championship player he thought he was. And at the end of the day, with Dame, he's really a feel-good story in the NBA with just being out there in Portland, being close to his family, and quote-unquote, being branded around loyalty.
We know who Mr. Miami was, is D-Wade. What happened there? He had to leave to come back. Alonzo had to leave to come back. Okay? Time and time again, you're going to see this because I came into this league, bro, 4th pick in the league. It was a market value. You didn't have a rookie salary cap. Shaq was 1, then Lonzo was 2, then Christian Laettner was 3. Guess what? I was 4. Mavericks didn't want to pay me.
Now, Jim Jackson is going to give you the real reality of the NBA and how it works. There are no Kobe Bryant loyalty deals. That is a rarity.
Didn't want to pay me because their draft picks 2 years before didn't pan out. I mean, what they got to do with me?
Right.
So I got the longest holdout ever in the league. Only played 28 games my rookie year. It took all my rookie year, but I wasn't going to give in. I said, because if you don't want to pay me, just trade me, or I'm going back to school. So I learned the business of basketball early. I got criticized for it. I got ostracized for it. Like, who's this rookie coming in here demanding? I said, I ain't demanding nothing. I said, my window of earning money is this. And I'm the 4th pick. I damn sure ain't taking what the 8th pick got, which they wanted to offer me. So I said, if you don't want to pay me, I'm not coming.
That's kind of crazy. They wanted him to take what the 8th pick was getting paid. At the end of the day, LeBron James, his real GOATness is the player empowerment as far as the business acumen that he has sprinkled on to the rest of the players in the NBA. He sort of awakened their eyes to the reality of the business. That is greater than anything any other player could have ever done on the court. And ironically, with Jim Jackson speaking right here about him holding out his rookie year, that very agent that told him to hold out is Mark Termini, the very same agent that LeBron James and Rich Paul's Clutch Sports is basically modeled off of. Mark Termini is basically the blueprint of how Clutch Sports operate. All the loopholes of getting guys paid like Ben Simmons when he had that back and forth with the 76ers but still got his money. LeBron James returning to Cleveland and taking those 1-year deals, where at the very end of all those 1-year deals, he basically made up for all the money that he lost for not taking max contracts earlier. The whole aura that Clutch Sports has today of their clients are going to get every single dime that's coming their way is really from Mark Termini. It's the same person that schooled Jim Jackson on the business side of the game.
So I said, if you don't want to pay me, I'm not coming. So that taught me the business of basketball early on. And I've seen it through organizations that I played at and played with where they'll tell you one thing, okay? They'll tell you and say one thing. But at the end of the day, it's the bottom line. And organization got to do what they got to do.
Mm-hmm.
The one time, I would say this, when I was in Miami, right? Pat Riley is the man. I was a free agent and went there and played. The next year, I was a free agent. And he said, he called me, I was living in Dallas. He called me and said, Jimmy, we got to make a move. I think you should be starting. But I got these 2 rookies we just drafted. I got to see if they can play. Well, one of them was D-Wade.
Mm-hmm.
Duh. You know what I'm saying? But he called me and told me.
Yeah, there was a relationship.
You see what I'm saying? He said, Jimmy, if you don't find a spot you want to go, you always can come back to Miami and play. But I want you to be able to do it, but I got to play these guys. So it's always outliers. But and as far as Dame, think about it. If I'm Dame, I'm like, where can I go? That really, can I do a 2 with a 1 year the second year is an option year, rehab, close. I'd love to see him in Minnesota, actually. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if he still want to be that far away from home rehabbing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Dame would be fine, but he's going to be on the back end. But he got to understand, too, when he comes back, he got a different role to play, too, wherever he goes.
Now, another question we also have with Dame, what was his real market value? How did teams really assess his talent level at this very moment, especially coming off that injury, knowing that he was already a smaller guard that doesn't necessarily play defense, and eventually his speed, his legs, they're going to give out. So what kind of player is he really going to be?
Think he'll look good at
anywhere, bro. Like, but put him with Houston.
I like that.
That's real nice.
Now, does he play backup to Fred? Or does he, because you think about it, he's out a year, he comes back with Van Vliet.
I mean,
move Fred.
Depending on how he looks, right?
Yeah, but
it sounds good, but could Dame diversify his game? Could he be a catch and shoot player also? Because we've seen with Giannis, when he doesn't have the ball, he looks a lot different. And that fit with Giannis was already operating on very thin margins. They could not improve the team year in and year out because they were at that second apron, and at the same time, Dame needed the ball in his hands. Giannis is a guy who operates the same way also, so that 1-2 punch that we all thought was going to happen between Dame and Giannis never came into fruition.
I think that's true. A conversation, but you put him on that team where there is a KD,
right.
There is, I think there's defense around him, there's length around him. And, it's just from, I always like, if it's a smaller guard, pair him with
bigger guys,
length around him. So him being on that team, you got a passing big in Sengun. You got KD, a lethal shooter. You got the Thompson twin as one of the best defenders in the game.
Yep.
Jabari Smith, length, spreads the floor like that. And there's enough youth around him that he doesn't have to carry load like that. You got Fred that can come off the bench, or you can play him in tandem, however you want to do that. But I like him in Houston. I think that's a great fit for him in Houston.
So how do you, it is interesting too, because he's a little bit older now, coming off Achilles. We know based on KD that you can come back and really be effective, especially because KD didn't rely on athleticism to kind of, and Dame doesn't either. He can just shoot it. But the mindset too, I tore my ankle up. Now, when I tore mine up, it was 800 years ago. So we didn't have the technology. But when you got your injury and you had to rehab, how long did it take you mentally? Because that's, with Dame, I think wherever he goes, if he does a 2-year deal, at least he's in the building with those guys. He may not be on the floor, but if he does a 2-year deal with a team, at least he's coordinated within that organization for a year. How long did it take you, like mentally, once you knew you were healthy, to kind of get, because that's the question Dame is going to have, that's going to be asked with Dame.
That's a great question, and also it provides us with a scope of just how teams really assess Dame, because you have to factor in it may take him a year to recover. He's aging, and at the same time, his speed was already going down because of that aging. And mentally, how long is it going to take him on top of recovery to get right back into his original stride, or just having enough momentum to trust his body at a high physical level, even if it's for 20, 25 minutes a game. We got to factor in the extra time for him to go through that process. And when you look at it from that perspective, how many contending teams were really considering picking up on Dame? That kind of sounds like an expensive 3-year project. So how big was Dame's market really?
Dame is going to have, there's going to be as with Dame.
Yep. So the crazy thing about when I had that injury, so I came back, and this was, compound fracture.
Yeah.
Both the tib and fib snapped, broke skin, all of that. That happened in August, right? I came back and played April, but I was practicing in like early February. Yeah, and I was limping and hobbling around in April, but I was practicing with the team. Like I wasn't, I wasn't a full-on hour and a half, but there was some live segments just to give me confidence that I could play through it, and a lot of it was for the rehab part of it of, that leg getting, some type of force going through it and learning how to cut and jump and react. So to be honest, I thought I looked bad to finish that season out, but it gave me confidence going into that summer that like, all right, if I got NBA games under my belt, I can attack this summer, 100%. So all in all, I think it was a good year turnaround for me to be completely, and mine's is different, right? Like Dame is, that's a tendon, right? That's a different type of, if I step this way, mine's is like, if something hit it, am I going to be good? His is, if I take a step, is it going to snap? Is it going, if I jump, can I be explosive? So my process was a little different. I don't know how you kind of can cope or get on the floor and kind of tune that out as far as, just playing basketball, because it happens from a non-basketball or a non-contact, injury. So yeah, I don't know how you get over that one. I ain't gonna lie, because it took me a year, but that was for me that year. It was, if I get hit or something hit it, there's a potential chance for it to snap.
Well, I was just saying, but you were around the team, you were in the facility, you were all that. So Dame, wherever he goes, they got to look at it. Like I know Rob Dillingham is a young rookie that's up there in Minnesota. He got to be able to have some runway next year to see if he can really be his first round pick, if he can be their future. But it's some teams I think strategically out there that with Dame, does he go back to Portland and finish it? Because now he's back home, family there, rehabbing, come back, swan story, finish a career there. I know it affects Scoot Henderson, but I think it's some avenues for Dame. And think about it, he getting it now. It's an offset with his contract. He get his money over 5 years, but whatever kind of deal he signed, it ain't like he getting 22 plus the new deal.
Right.
Yeah. It's an offset of salaries within that.
I was gonna ask that.
Yeah, it's just like coaches.
Yeah.
It's an offset.
Gotcha.
So if he get 10 from the new team, then the Bucks only own 12, not the whole 22.
Right.
22.5. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's why it makes a ton of flexibility there.
But that's a bold move. That's the longest stretch, wave and stretch that we've seen.
Especially
but that just
from a
tells you the
superstar.
mindset of an organization and what they think. Okay? Seriously.
Or whoever is pressuring them to be relevant, aka Giannis. Think about everything they just spoke about. The preparation, the rehabbing, the mentally preparing to get back to perform at a high level just for the regular season. But Giannis, in his world, the way he's been performing, his mindset is NBA Finals. Dame, after this injury, is nowhere near that. And after peeling back the layers, you could kind of see why Giannis, at the end of the day, said, hey, Dame, we're going to give you your money, but you got to figure this out somewhere else. Again, the real Giannis is the player that kind of acted out in the playoffs last year after the game where he grabbed Matherin's head and he had that back and forth with Tyrese Halliburton's father. That's the real Giannis. The nice guy persona, the little international, oh, I'm not sure, oh, I'm in a new country, the little nice guy act that he puts on, that's just PR.
Because they thought it was good. How many people, come on, when you said Dame going to Milwaukee, first thoughts was what?
I was loving that.
Oh.
I was loving it because he was going to play with Giannis. I was loving it.
But I didn't see P, and you were there.
Because I always thought he needed help.
But I didn't see any real coordination between them in a two-man game. Offside, pin downs between the two, movement. It was either Giannis had it or Dame had it.
Facts. Jim Jackson again, he's cooking, he's forcing the truth out. These two never really looked like a 1-2 tandem. It looked like your turn, my turn, your turn, my turn. Again, with Dame, he has to have the ball in his hand. He's a great player. But for most of his career, he's actually been a one-way guy. Doesn't necessarily play defense, not a really catch and shoot guy, and is also not a player that necessarily does something great outside of scoring. It's not like he's getting a ton of assists for his teammates like Tyrese Halliburton. For most of his career, he's been out there in Portland where he's had the green light to shoot an unlimited amount of shots, and he's played in the same your turn, my turn basketball with CJ McCollum.
And how do you really exploit that and utilize that if you don't use them the right way to really force the defense in these precarious situations where you got to guard both of them at the same time? And I think that was a big flaw in why a lot of the success with Milwaukee was fleeting, because I don't think those two really offensively.
And even with Dame being healthy, they were already operating in very thin margins in order to get to the finals or even possibly win a championship. Very thin margins. With him injured, it makes sense why they just said, hey, fuck it. This shit's done.
Leading, because I don't think those two really offensively.
I'm a Drew Holiday loyalist, so I
bro,
thought
I
it
love
was.
Drew,
I
man.
thought it was. They wanted offense.
What,
it was
think,
weird.
You think Giannis wanted something to do with that?
Once again, Jim Jackson is cooking. What is he alluding right here? There's only one factor that remains constant, is Giannis. Drew was his wingman. They won a championship together. Then they had a couple playoff series where they needed shot making, and after yet another elimination, Drew Holiday got shipped out. And as we could see, he was still an effective player because he went on to play for the Celtics and then won a championship. So who's the one constant that still remains in the picture?
I'm a Drew Holiday loyalist, so I
bro, I
thought it
love
was.
Drew,
I
man.
thought it was. They wanted offense.
What,
It was
think,
weird.
You think Giannis wanted something to do with
I don't think so.
You notice the awkward laughs? Let's listen to that again because we're getting a sneak peek to what the players in their circles really talk about behind the scenes. And the narrative is growing louder and louder. That Giannis, he will snake you if he has to.
I'm a Drew Holiday loyalist, so
Oh,
I
bro, I
thought it
love
was.
Drew,
I
man.
thought it was. They wanted offense.
What,
It
you
was
think,
weird.
You think Giannis wanted something to do with that?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. After
I
you
don't
just
think so,
win it.
man.
After
Yeah,
you
that's
just
what
win it.
But Giannis, he said he was upset.
Yeah.
He knew about it. He wanted Dame. Hey, I'm just saying.
Well, man, you.
Notice again, notice the laughs. Notice the laughs. They don't want to say it on camera. This is where this player podcast landscape gets tricky. Guys don't want to reveal too much. They just want to give the audience just enough. But from time to time, you can see the real sentiments from behind the scenes leak out.
You can still be upset, and
He
like you
wanted
said,
Dame.
it depends on that conversation. If he knew, maybe he did go to bat for Drew. But at the end of the day, it's not his call. I mean, as much as you want to say Giannis runs the organization, those owners are going to do what they want to do. They might come ask you for your opinion, but that doesn't mean they're going to roll with you. Like, no,
Well,
I want.
it depends. It depends, bro. It
Yeah,
really
gonna
does.
say yes to
Now,
that.
Especially in a small market
in a small
like that.
market
Yeah, 'cause-
because you're not gonna get free agents. And I'm
Yeah.
not saying that Giannis did it. I'm not saying that, but I think in that playoff series when they lost and they couldn't find offense, that was a big reason why Drew ended up being traded. But you go into your star player, whether you want to make the decision or not. And he gonna have to voice an opinion one way or another.
Get
on
your
what he
much.
wants.
And Giannis has had the voice and opinions out there in Milwaukee for a good minute. Keep in mind, when they traded for Dame, the previous owner was trying to sell, and the narrative was Giannis was not going to sign the extension. And when it comes to owners trying to sell franchises, your superstar has a nice piece of chunk change as to why the team is worth a certain price. So to please Giannis, they traded for Dame, and then we saw the owner instantly sell. Instantly sell. Keep that in mind. Because they traded multiple first-round picks for Drew. They traded 3 of them. So just getting rid of Drew for Dame and giving away more picks we see why the Bucks don't really have any draft capital until 2031. For the most part, they have been in unison with Giannis, and he is not going anywhere. He is their cash cow. Make no mistake about that. But hey, it is what it is. We're getting more of the reality of the business side of the game. With the influx of money coming into the league with their brand new TV deal, not only the pressure is on for teams to be successful and get to a championship level, the pressure is also on for them to be successful financially, to have a lucrative enough team to bring fans in, to spend the dollars, to keep the net worth of these teams at the same price point. The new owners, the same group that own the Cleveland Browns, they bought the Bucks for $4 billion. And there is expectation to not only keep up the valuation, but to supersede it. And that definitely starts with having a superstar in Giannis. You guys definitely hit up the link in the description below. We got more NBA stories. Check out the playlist. We got some nice game films on different dynamics that are happening on the court. It's also a combination of those NBA stories. And until next time, you fellas stay safe. Peace.